Hello, my screaming skulls. Wow. It is I, the Phantasmic Paul Jessup. So, I know, I set this whole thing up, like this whole YouTube video saying I was going to talk about horror and dark fantasy and publishing, and I barely covered it at all. Oh no, I'm a bad person, blah, 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 blah. But today I'm going to talk about publishing. Actually, I'm going to be talking about some bad advice I've been seeing out there. So I'm not going to name the YouTuber that said this. I just say they're a publisher, a small press. One I almost worked with in the past, but didn't, for reasons I'm not going to go into here. But let's just say it made me suspicious of them since then. And when I saw them posting this YouTube video, I was like, well, let me see what they're up to. Maybe they're kind of different now. Maybe they changed their ways. But no. So the advice they gave just made me go, oh God. No. Not only like, no. Yes. They basically said that small press authors and indie authors should not work with bookstores. They said that flat out. They said they shouldn't work with small bookstores. They should just not do it. It's not worth the money. And they laid down like, oh, you earn this much, you do that much, you spend that much, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I mean, no. As somebody who started like basically the last few years going out and doing book signings and things like that, yeah, comparing it to like when I had a few books out, I want to say like 2011, stuff like that, like a few short story collections where at the time I wasn't near any bookstores and I wasn't really reaching out to them, things like that. Compared to what I'm doing now, there's like a huge difference. Money isn't the only thing. That's the first thing I want to say. Money is not the only thing. When you're doing a career as a writer, if you're focusing on short-term income losses and benefits, you can look at the spreadsheet and go, oh, well, no, this would be bad for me. Blah, I'm not going to do it. But a writing career is not the short term. You know what I mean? If you're a professional writer, it's not just about like, oh, this money I'm getting right now, blah, 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 that kind of thing. No. You're laying foundations. And that's the important part. You're laying foundations. You're making connections. You're meeting people. If you go out there and you do a book signing, you're not just sitting there hoping a few people come in and buy your book. You're meeting people. You're having conversations with people. You're going to put a face to the book. It's not just going to be, oh, this random self-published book or this random small press book or even like the Big Five. Even if you're like published by the Big Five. I know like quite a few people that have gone out there and done Big Five, like done their book tours and had like one or two people show up or maybe nobody show up or like a ton of people show up. That's not the point, The point is to get out there and do something, to be a part of it. To like, yeah, every single book signing I did, I sold quite a lot of my books throughout like last year when I did like pretty much every book signing I've done. I've sold, sometimes it's only like one or two books, but the last year, pretty much all the ones I did, I've sold almost all the books I've had in stock at every place I've been at. That's cool. But to me, the really, really cool part was meeting those people. It was not, oh, look, I sold lots of books. It was the numbers themselves aren't as important. The reason why selling a lot of books means something to me is that these people want to read my stuff. You know what I mean? There's a connection there. There's something there. And you're meeting people and you're like, that's part of it. You know what I mean? As a writer, you're an entertainer. And as an entertainer, you're a public persona of sorts. I mean, yes, you probably want to sit in your like little cave and write your books and just shit them out in the world or whatever. But that's not it, That's not part of it is doing this. Not just this here, but like all of this. You know what I mean? It's important to me to meet people. It's wonderful, especially people that have read my stuff before, which seems to happen at every single, like I said, every single one. I've had people come to me just tell me how much they love my books, all that stuff. I mean, that's wonderful. That connection is so important, and getting out there and being in front of people and doing it. It's work, yes. And if you're looking at like short term, whatever, it doesn't matter. Because the first few times, yeah, I didn't. There was like, I think the first book launch I did, 2 people showed up. You know, um, one of them was just a friend of mine. The second person, actually, I'd never met her before, but she ended up being like, we made a good connection, and she's now my girlfriend, so that's pretty cool. But beside the point, and like some of them, like slowly with each one I've done, and each time I've been out doing things and doing like author meetings and things like that, I started like more and more people started coming to these things, and it's like a snowball effect. It's you've got to get out there, you've got to meet people, you've got to show your face. You can't just hope that people would just miraculously find you because you're posting stuff on Twitter, Blue Sky, or Facebook or whatever. Yeah, you can make some connections like that, but look, so I worked marketing for like other companies and things like that, like social marketing, that sort of thing. And basically the formula is this. So for like 10% of the people who view what you do on social media will click on one thing. 10%, they'll just click on it, okay? 10% of those people will buy what they click on. Think about that. So that is like basically 1%, 10% of 10%, 1% of, so if you have like let's say you have 100 people like your post, like buy my book, whatever. Of those 100 people, 10 will click on the link, and of those 10 people, one person might buy it. That's it. Now, that's because there is this disconnect, you know what I mean? There's like a wall. It's like the same as seeing a commercial on TV, right? You see the commercial, it gets in your head, like if you post enough time, eventually that person will buy something. Eventually, like you see the commercial enough, it'll like weasel into your brain, and you'll like, okay, I must buy Colgate toothpaste, whatever, that kind of thing. But if you're out there and you're meeting people and you're talking to people and you're not just selling them things, you're just having a conversation with them and telling them like, look, I love my book. This is my book. This is such a cool book. You know what I mean? They see that. There's like a connection there. They'll feel that. You know what I mean? And if your idea is good and the writing is good and it connects with them, that's like so important. So important. Because you're not just, it's not like I'm up here, they're over there. You're in there. You're making friends. You're enjoying it. It's just something just so wonderful about it. It's not. Maybe I'm just an extrovert. I don't know, but I love doing it. And I would never do. Even if I sold like no books when I did it, I would keep doing it. But I will say this. I will say like it snowballs. It picks up speed, and people start doing it. And the more you get out there and meet people, the more people are going to see you in person and be like, oh, this person's interesting. These books sound interesting. And it becomes more than just somebody shouting on the internet. So don't listen to that advice. Don't listen to the advice that, small press, indie, or even big five shouldn't go out to bookstores, shouldn't do stuff with bookstores, especially indie bookstores. Bullshit. They are the lifeblood of the publishing industry. Just like indie books, small books, self-published books are the lifeblood of the publishing industry, This is where the real stuff is. This is where, the heartbeat of it, you know what I mean? And to do that, it feels like you're cutting your nose to spite your face, that old saying. You know what I mean? Like, it can't just be about the money. It can't just be about the short-term windfalls or what have you. It can't just be about like budgeting or blah, 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 blah. It has to be about getting out there, making that connection, about meeting people and talking to people, and not just selling your book, but what's the word I'm thinking of? Not selling it, but instead, and not promoting it, but instead just like, it's your baby. It's something wonderful that you made, and you want to tell the world about it because it's wonderful. You know what I mean? It's not about commodity, but instead about connection, especially when it comes to writing. Writing is more of an intimate, personal connection than almost any other art, other than, I would say, maybe music, and maybe painting, and maybe theater a little bit, because it involves the reader participating. There's a conversation between the text and the imagination of the reader. You know what I mean? They have to take the words that you've given them and then create this world in their head as they read. So it's like a participatory thing. And to say that you don't have to go out, you don't have to meet readers, you don't have to like talk to them or discuss them, that just feels like, I don't know. It's a sad thing. I would never want to do that. I would stop being a writer if I decided not to meet readers anymore. That I didn't want to, if I wanted to just be like a little hermit in the woods. I wouldn't, I need that, you know. It's amazing, the connection you can make. And I remember when I first started out, like being a writer, like professionally, like trying to go and become a writer. And I was able to actually join the SFWA and the HWA. And in there, they actually had like a listing of emails of other writers that, you know, I loved as a kid growing up, as an adult, these writers that meant so much to me. And I reached out to them and I told them that. And you could tell that they felt, you know, that same connection, you know what I mean? And it's just something miraculous about that, you know? And it also makes me think too, ages ago, my daughter was like in elementary school. One of her friends, a new book had come to the library by an author that she loved, one of her friends. And her friend was in tears, like talking about this book and how she was so excited to read this new book and how much she loved it. I'm like, that, you know what I mean? That. Does anything else really have that kind of connection where people are in tears or people are just so obsessed? They're just so, you know what I mean? It just touches you in a way that's profound. So profound. Well, anyway, so there. This is my first one where I'm talking about like publishing in general. So there you go. And remember, friends, to stay spooky. There'll be more, trust me about that, more talking about publishing, things like that. I'm a very opinionated man, as you can tell, and I have my very, very, very many opinions. So you will hear them. All right. Bye now.